There's a lot of disagreement in photography, but I think we can all come together collectively and say that one of, if not the most important part of photography is composition. No matter how long you've been doing photography, no matter what camera gear you've got, if you fail to compose nicely, you don't do the end result justice. But I think there's one thing that comes before composition that's even more important, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I would bet my bank balance, there's not much in it, so don't get too excited, that every single photographer at some point along the way has done something like this. You pull up to a lovely location, you think it looks stunning, you're amazed, you grab your camera, you walk somewhere, you look in a certain direction that looks cool, perhaps the light's nice, perhaps there's something decent on the horizon, and you take a photo. I've referred to this in the past as the happy snapper stage because it's exactly that. We're happy to be somewhere amazing, we grab our camera and we take a snap without properly thinking about the intention behind the photograph. And sometimes I even feel quite bad about telling people this is a stage you want to move away from if you're serious about photography, because it's actually quite nice when you think about it. We're happy, we're outdoors, we just want to take snaps. A bit like a kid when you get a new video game and you run around with a sword and you just chop stuff and have a good time. So the skill or act that I personally think is more important than composition, because composition can't exist without it, and it also comes before composition in the photo taking process, and it's subject recognition. You can call this noticing, you can call it your photographic eye, but at the end of the day it's just the brain and the eye thinking and analysing to spot a scene or a subject that will go on to create a great composition, more so than just standing in a pleasing direction and taking a photo. Now you could argue, well, yeah, that is composition, and I get it, it's a piece of the puzzle, but I think of composition more as the fine-tuning you do when you have recognized that something, a subject or a scene, is worth our time to actually stand there and create the composition of it. Because I could do the exact same thing we just spoke about. I could pull up at the beach, be amazed and happy that I'm at the beach, see the view, think it's beautiful, walk down to the edge of the sand, grab my camera, and I could imply various different photography guidelines. I could get my horizon straight, I can choose my focus point and how I'm going to execute the image, but it's still just a photo standing in a pleasing place, rather than having identified something that is actually interesting and worthy of using compositional skills. So although I would have just composed a photo, technically speaking, it would be composing a photo without thinking about the intention behind why on earth I took that photo in the first place. And I think this is one of the main things that holds a lot of photographers back, and I think way too many people stay in this stage. I definitely did when I was not even just starting out in photography, years into photography. I still found myself doing that, and I think it's so easily done that sometimes we don't even know we're doing it, because at the end of the day, when we stand somewhere, what's in front of us to the human eye and the vastness that our human eyes can take in, it's incredible, it looks fantastic, so we think that's going to translate to the camera lens, but it just doesn't most of the time. So if you're still with me and subject recognition and noticing photo opportunities and refining your photography approach is something you're currently struggling with, then I've got a couple of pointers throughout this video that will help aid this. And the great thing about them as well is I think implementing them will also help your direction in photography. As you go along and start to take more refined photos with much more clear subject matter, you're hopefully then going to be able to distinguish what it is you actually like taking photos of going forward for the future. First off, the 5 to 10 minute arrival rule. Some people refer to this as the snack rule. You pull up at a place and instead of doing the happy snapper mindset like we spoke about, you just sit down, you have a snack, you drink a coffee, or if you're still full off this morning's full English breakfast, then just sit there and take it all in. Not only does this give you a moment to sit and appreciate how lovely an area is, which I think is something all photographers need to do more because we're so invested in taking photos, sometimes we don't get to take the place in for ourselves. So not only does it do that, but it's also straight up putting a roadblock in front of you, just going off and snapping in a direction in any random order, because you're specifically sitting down and waiting to use your camera. Of course, I know there's going to be opportunities when you're fighting against time. Maybe something's happening, that there's a burst of fog or something, and you have to take the photo right there and then, fair enough. But when you've got time on your side, and specifically when you're in quite vast areas where you can sit down and have a nice little rest and take it all in, perhaps there's loads going on that you need to process, this works fantastically to stop you just going off and snapping away. This also gives you time to alter yourself from the mindset of traveling, driving, getting public transport, whatever it may be, to get you to the place where you're taking photos in the first place, and ease into what you're now there to do and the task at hand. You will have heard a lot of people say that they like to take a few warm-up shots when they're out taking photos so they can ease into the photography process. I do agree with that. I think warm-up shots are great. They're a great way to sort of warm your mind up to what you're actually out to do. But I've actually find that either sitting or standing somewhere and just being present for a minute and taking it in does a much better job, just because for all you know, the first photo you take on a day could be the best photo you take all day. But by all means, try them both, sitting and taking stuff in and seeing if you can notice photos while you're having a sit down, or try some warm-up shots, whichever one works for you. Both fantastic ideas. Oh no, that was the perfect moment and I had it closed. Another thing you can do instead of, or in combination with that last one, that will also hopefully restrain you from running off and just taking photos in any odd direction, is to just walk up and down a bit, walk around and take mental pictures in your head. Look at the different angles, look at the different vantage points you've got, take in textures and details, and just have a little bit of a wander. Keep your camera in your hand, of course, ready to go just in case something crazy does happen, but try and take some photo ideas in your head before you actually start snapping. This works especially well if you're faced with something like a big building that you can get all the way around of, but even somewhere like the beach that's very vast and open, I find just having a little bit of a walk, get those legs moving, get that mind working again, slowly move into that process of taking photos. You don't need to walk to Paris and back, just have a little bit of an explore before you start pressing the shutter button, and it will do you the world of good, trust me. And while you're doing this process of just having a little bit of a wander, a little bit of a walk around, stretching the legs, you want to try and take note of stuff that make you stop and say, that's interesting or that's cool, because generally, not every single time, but if something makes you stop and say that is interesting or that is cool or that's quite unique, there is normally something you can do there, a photo that you can take there. Sometimes, of course, there's something that you really like and you can't really get a photo of it. That happens from time to time, but more often than not, if something makes you stop, it's interesting and it's cool, then you're likely going to be able to execute a photo of it. All right, lastly, a little exercise I would recommend to help you spot and notice photos, subjects and scenes that work is scanning or looking for different images of the same thing once you have taken something you're happy with. So let's say you take a photo of a car, for example, and you're really happy with that photo, you're pleased with it. Instead of being like, all right, sound, I got that photo, I'm running off in another direction looking for the next thing. Stop, slow down, and try and take a couple more images of that same subject, but in completely different ways. This really helps, I find, to keep you locked into that mindset of thinking harder rather than, again, just going off in a direction, taking a photo of something that looks nice in front of you, doing it in another direction and repeating. Over time, as you build up that knowledge of all the different ways in which you can take a photo of the same subject, but in drastically different ways, you're going to mentally bank all of that and be able to pull them out at any given time when you need them. The next photo you take might be something you can incorporate weeks later when you're in a completely different environment. You just never know, and you want to absorb all of these different ways in which you can notice and see the photo opportunities. I think this last exercise especially keeps you away from being too excited or overwhelmed when you go to a place, new places especially, because I know exactly what it's like to go abroad somewhere or pull up to a new spot for the first time that I've wanted to see for years, and I'm so overwhelmed and I'm so excited to be there that I do the happy snapper dance. All right, so to conclude, I still think composition is one, if not the most important part of photography, but you can't compose a nice photo unless you first identify and recognize a clear subject, a clear scene that is interesting enough to give your time to in order to then create a pleasing composition of it. So that is kind of my opinion. I'm sure people will disagree, but hopefully it helps some of you. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.